Mark, since you are the religion person, as you've identified yourself, I just want to push you a little bit more on what you're saying about religion here. And I'm curious, for these academies, is religion really just the excuse, the opportunity to create these institutions, or are you arguing that religion is playing a role in motivating these leaders? And and part of this, I'm still enamored with Kate's wonderful paper from yesterday. And I'm curious where you're placing these people within the networks that she so wonderfully shows us. Are they evangelicals? Are they self-identified? Are they motivated by vital religion? Or, as I suspect, are they in fact dissenters? Is there a motivation there of the political liability of being a dissenter? And so I'm just here curious how you sort of place them and what repercussions having this form of education, which is mirrored in Great Britain at this time, in dissenting academies and in other academies, is this another test of those networks? Is there any assumption of some sort of shared understanding? Or in fact, is there something quite different going on here?
Okay, so I'll start with sort of who are they, how do they identify, but the interesting thing that I've found is that, so mostly I'm dealing with Presbyterians for the most part. It's Mid-Atlantic and some Anglicans, but I'm dealing with largely with Presbyterians. Both the old and new side build academies, and they both produce a lot of the people I'm talking about. How I view religion's function here is I tend to think of it as a sort of a rupturing moment. The awakening is a moment that ruptures, and so the conflict, I wouldn't say was not religious. The conflicts embedded in the awakening were clearly religious. But I don't know when those schools would have opened without the awakening is sort of what I would want to suggest, and then therefore religion kind of creates the impetus for them, and then regardless of how these people identify, and some do, John Fia's book about Philip Fithian, I mean, he ends up in the army and he is a believer and a minister till he dies. Some of them aren't, and some of them sort of use the academy. So I think this is one of those messy things where, it depends person to person, community to community even, sort of where in New Jersey you are even. And then to the last point about where they fit in the transatlantic Protestant networks, or transatlantic evangelical networks and others. There's a great diary, I think it's Samuel Davies' diary, and he goes abroad and solicits, he starts to raise money. And John Ewing, I think, does the same thing on the other side of the pond, and I think in Jamaica too, to raise money for the New Ark Academy. So there's clearly working Atlantic networks here, and many of the teachers are coming over from Scottish universities and Irish academies. So I think it's there. I'm not sure really what happens afterwards. I think there tends to be more domestic funding for the school. So the main way in which I find them interacting abroad is through fundraising, and that, to my knowledge, drops off at least in the short term after the revolution. So I hope that covers everything.